love the background.
I recently got my self-tape set up, finalized, so this bad boy's been getting a lot of work lately.
Oh, that's good. A lot of kind of self tapes and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah, for auditions.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So
what's the
we're all still under lockdown over here, so a lot of the audition process has been switched to over Zoom. Yeah. So a lot of us have been learning to use this medium quite often.
Yeah, I was speaking to is it a friend of yours, Michael?
Yeah.
The other day. I love Michael. He's great.
Me too. He's one of my favorite humans ever.
I could sense he was a little bit nervous initially when we started. I'm like, you've got nothing to be nervous about. If you're doing a film and you're sat on the toilet, then that's great with me, you know. So yeah. If you could tell me who you are and the title of your film you submitted, that'd be great.
Sure. My name is Katisha Shaw. I am a Toronto, Ontario local in Canada, and the title of my film is called Watching.
Yeah, one of the reasons I wanted to call you, because I've kind of the great thing about being able to ask people about these things, because obviously a lot of people want to talk about their films, and it's the tone of your film that I liked more than anything else. It's almost like I had this in a really kind of maybe a smaller way, but it had this Return to Oz vibe that I liked. I don't know if you've ever seen the sequel to Wizard of Oz, but had this kind of slightly darker tone, as though she's returning to something that's happened before. So yeah, I quite enjoyed that. What was your kind of process for making it, and did it take long to write?
Okay, so I am not actually the original writer for Watching. My friend Jamie Oxenham, who's camera shy but is a wizard behind the lens, him and I actually ventured into this project together. And we brainstormed quite a bit. And originally what the film was for is it was supposed to be this cute little like Zoom room friend competition. And it was our own little isolation short film festival, headed by one of the casting directors out of Toronto. And he's a great friend of mine. And so it was born from the concept of make some art in your house. Okay.
Yeah.
And so Jamie and I got on the phone and went around and we're like, well, what can we do? Because I'm not actually in Toronto proper. I'm actually an hour and a half north out in the country. So I had a lot of land to play with. And the original rules were, you know, it had to be under 3 minutes. It couldn't have, you know, excessive violence. You had to do it with only yourself or who live in your home. Stuff like that. So we were very limited on what we could do or how we did it. And those were the original rules to the film festival. I mean, as the festival grew, they expanded on how they wanted to approach it. And it snowballed into this big, beautiful piece of art that a lot of people participated in.
Yeah.
I had already made my film at the point, and I was like, I'm not going to go back and change it because like we're happy with where it's at. And so during the original process, though, Jamie and I were kind of bouncing ideas back and forth, and I'm a horror nerd. And I was like, well, let's do something ominous. And we were going through, and my mom actually has that big fairy statue, and she's really pretty. But it was like, well, let's make her evil.
Yeah. I think
big as I am.
Yeah, I think the way it was, I think that was really, it's as you can probably agree with, it's such a, I kind of like, we had very clear rules as well, and I know the ISFF did as well, but we thought, right, whatever land you have, and Chris and I, the other founder, we kind of joked about it. If you've got like a huge orchard with trees and everything and whatever, then have at it, because that's, you know, people are going to have great cameras, people are going to have iPhones or whatever. So it's because we've seen it from super low end to super high production value, which has been really nice to see. But the intent and the execution across the board on majority of the films has been quite nice. So
one of the original rules for ISFF, one of the original rules for our short film festival over here was it was supposed to be shot on like your camera phone or low end equipment too. So like we shot on this teeny tiny little dinky hand cam.
Yeah, I kind of like that, and because obviously I'm a Blair Witch fan. I'm a huge horror fan as well, massive, and so I think it's more acceptable as long as your intent and your story is great, because obviously story is paramount, as I've repeated quite a lot. if the intent's there and you've got something interesting to say, then it kind of doesn't matter what you shoot on, because you've seen a couple of feature films like Steven Soderbergh just made that Unsane with Claire Foy, and that's all shot on an iPhone with this anamorphic lens. So he used one of these, and then it's it just, you don't need to have like a Brad Pitt or something like that in it. As long as you've got conviction and you've got a story to tell, then great. So I kind of like the fact that you're in the woods as well, because it's like, oh, this is completely different to everyone else's. And so those statues, did you say they belong to your folks?
My mom.
So did you move those, or?
Yeah, so the fairy is actually as big as I am. She's massive. Unfortunately, I forget the name of the artist, but she's local to Peterborough, Kawartha, Blackburn, somewhere in this great cottage area in Ontario. And the fairy is actually made out of, it's almost like paper mache, but it's done with fabric. So she's not heavy, she's very awkward.
Wow, okay. So yeah, because that's something that production value wise, that when you see something like that made in a big movie, it is going to be light, but it looks heavy. So I think that's the same thing in your film. Those look really heavy. And I thought, are they actually in location? That's really interesting. So if anyone else watches this, when they see this film, because we're going to showcase all the films in one way or another over the next, I'd say, few months, because we want to really honestly produce something for every single film and show all of them. And we're going to do that. And it's going to kill me if I'm going to do that. And, but those statues, no one's going to believe they're lightweight because they look heavy.
I know.
So they're made out of some sort of fabric. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool how they're put together. And the fact that she's as big as she is blew my mind. We actually found that artist at an art show and fell in love with her, so we had to have it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Is there a pair? That's right, isn't it?
No, it's just one.
Oh, mate. Okay. That's interesting. I don't know why I thought the one at the end.
Probably because of the way we moved her, just the camera angle.
That's clever. That's clever. Yeah. That's just, I'm sometimes slow on the uptake as well. So,
I think we switched the axis on it a couple times to give her more depth, but she's pretty beefy.
Yeah, it was really nicely shot. So who shot the film?
So it was a combination of myself in my bedroom and then Jamie with me outside, again, completely socially distanced. We had to stay far away from each other. And when we originally submitted the film to our version of ISFF, it almost got disqualified because we were outside and I had to prove that we were on my own property.
How did you, just out of curiosity, you don't have to necessarily tell particular details, how did you prove that?
Well, I took the camera outside on a video call and I was like, here we are.
That's great. That's really great. We kind of stepped back from that. We thought, right, we're going to trust everyone. We're going to trust everyone. So there's a couple of times where I'm like, that parent doesn't look like that child at all. So like, oh, and then, but it's been explained in a couple of podcasts. Oh yeah, my wife was this being at the door. Oh, that's who that was. Right. Okay. That makes a lot of sense.
Nice. No, I'm excited to see all of the films. I think it's really neat that during this time when the world has come to a standstill and we're all at this weird stop and wondering what do we do next? These little festivals have popped up and encouraged people to create art, and art moves mountains, and it could be goofy or it could be serious, but we're here telling stories and keeping each other's morale alive. So I don't care who did what or how. I'm so excited to see them all happening.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And that was, what did you call it? The Zoom idea between friends, to create content for each other. So we've just been having like Zoom rooms and like roundtable chats and developing, scripts and concepts together, and then going off into our own little corners and coming up with stuff. Like Michael and I have a couple things together. I think you saw, I gave you the link for one of the other films that I did all by myself, actually on an iPad. Yeah.
There were 6 other professional actors in that, and in that group, I've also been like talking about different scripts and different things that we can build together. That's and start filming on our own. So
Yeah, Michael was telling me about a group he's part of for Asian actors in Toronto and Canada, and it's
Hmm.
having communities between groups of friends or groups of actors or filmmakers, because you know what it's like. You've got someone that's great at makeup and someone that's essentially great at sound and cinematography. Like the shot choices in your film show maturity as well, which I quite like. So it wasn't just wide shot, super close. It was really well thought out, um, and yeah, it's that our original intent for the festival was just between myself and one other person, Chris, to send each other films and see what we can come up with in isolation. And we thought of this a week before lockdown, pretty much worldwide, about 8-9 weeks ago, something like that. I kind of lost track.
Wow.
And we thought, right, I suggested, why don't we open this up further to more people? And then when we had this initial chat, right, got to get a domain, got to get the name, got to get this, got to get that. Because I thought Isolation Film Festival, that's got to be taken at some point. When I looked at all the
Yeah.
search terms, no one's got it yet. Right, buy it now, buy it now. So I thought we spent that initial money on it. And it's only self-funded, and there's only 3 people ever involved in any of the content.
Oh, wow.
I do a majority of I do all the marketing, the podcast stuff, and all of that.
No,
So
you guys are doing great for that, because like
the
it spread
correspondence is
across
mental.
Canada really quick.
Yeah, and we've had submissions from all over, which it's so exciting when you've got an email from someone in Tel Aviv telling you, oh yeah, I've got a film for the festival, how do I send it to you? Amazing, send that to me now.
That's
And
amazing.
it's Quran, but it's not Quran, it's Quran cheating or Quaran cheating. It's super clever title.
Oh,
So when we work out how we're doing the posters, their posters going to be in Hebrew. So it's going to be super interesting to kind of get a lot of this content. And we've had it
that's really
from
neat.
mainland Europe, Australia, New Zealand, one from Colombia, which is very cool. I'm trying to tick off all the continents you see. So.
No, that's amazing though. Like that is so cool that so many artists have been inspired to come together and do these things and connect all over the globe. Like what other what other year does this happen?
I know, absolutely, because it's such a crazy time, and it's almost like an outlet for me because I create stuff outside of work, and I thought it'd be a really nice place to have a platform for people to create content. And we've had some absolutely extraordinary pieces of work, really have. A lot of the films have come, it kind of coincided with your festival over there.
Sorry, 1 second.
That's all right, it's all right.
Still up.
That's the tone from a horror film.
Sorry. When I'm broadcasting off my phone, if anyone calls through, it's going to try and...
That's okay, don't worry about that.
There, okay.
So yeah, I was just saying that tone reminds me of something from a horror film. You're just about to hear a call, someone's outside the kitchen window or something.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so a lot of the films obviously kind of coincided with the ISFF, and we've had a lot of films that I didn't see during the festival are part of our festival. So I was super proud of the amount of Canadian input is amazing, and the quality of and the standard of kind of acting and that kind of thing as well. Like we've had a 11-year-old girl, Tegan Sellers. She produced a film called Dark Closet. She dreamt an idea. Her mum spoke to her the next morning about a nightmare, and she wrote it down in a dream book, the mother, and then it ended up being a short film. And the writer was in South Africa, who's also her acting coach. And then they produced a film. We had a podcast of the 3 of us, so on 3 different continents. It was very cool.
That is incredible.
So yeah, it's kind of blown up. We thought we'd get 20 submissions, and there's no money behind it. There's no big festival. There's no big kind of company or anything like Cineplex or whatever. And we got 105 submissions. So we were super stoked about that. And seeing foreign language films in our festival, I was like, oh, so cool. It's just kind of cool, you know?
Yeah, I have a question though. How are you going to be able to judge and assess foreign language films? Are they coming in with?
So we were sent. I think it's 5. 4 of them had subtitles, and one of them didn't. So the one that didn't, I emailed saying, this film's amazing, and it is. It's a potential winner of maybe a category or two. I'll actually show it to you in a minute. Just a little sneak preview. And it's about a father telling his son about this fable about a wolf. I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have drunk Coke on this podcast. But I said to him, this is incredible because you can almost understand what the entire story is through visuals. Now, if you can do that as a storyteller for a language kind of category kind of thing, then that's super powerful. And he said, yeah, I'll send you the subtitles and you check them out. So, well, how do I judge that properly? Because you can tell broken English, that kind of thing. But I had a friend that was part Haitian, part American, that she could kind of work out what the best the French English translation would be. So I actually helped a couple of filmmakers out with like they had problems exporting, that kind of thing. So I advised them what to do. And then we sorted the subtitles. And when you see the film, it's like, wow, this is great. So we sent him the slightly corrected subtitles back. He put it on his film because I thought subtitles can actually be quite a creative thing. So have you seen a film called Man on Fire with Denzel Washington?
Mm-hmm.
So when you watch that film, the subtitles are a character, and it's super smart how they do them. Like they punch in, it's a very Tony Scott thing. They punch in, they're all over the place. And we thought, right, you want to have creative control over everything. If someone was doing my subtitles, I'd want full control, you know? So
Absolutely.
it's, yeah. So we've been very lucky with the submissions and the number of submissions. And we've had first timers like doing animation, that kind of thing. But when you see, oh yeah, this is my first animation, I almost don't believe them. And then because the sheer quality, it's like, wow, you did this as your first.
Yeah. Some of the stuff that I saw even in the Canadian version just blew my mind that it was their first time doing it. Like the stop animation just amazed me on some of them. And my mom was talking to me about doing stop animation with my son as our next project. So
amazing.
There's a whole bunch of stuff coming down the pipes on my end too, but it's like I'm doing this stuff just for fun. So
yeah, absolutely. As what we'll do is I'll show you this French film. This is a little sneak peek. So I don't think this has been shown any other festival yet, which is great. Let me find it. I'm gonna find the correct one. Let me find you the correct one. Correct work. Films only. How have you been getting on in isolation generally?
going a little bit batty. Like I'm still working full time on top of attempting to homeschool my son and creating. I've filled all of my downtime with online classes where I'm actually taking continuous acting classes from places like Vancouver. I'm in one in LA. I've got regular ones happening that are out of Toronto.
Oh, wow.
A writing class, which is weird because before this, I never fancied myself a writer or a filmmaker. And being on the other side of the lens has given me, I've always had a respect and appreciation for those on the other side of the lens, but it's just given me a deeper understanding of the craft and teaching me how to hit my mark in a different way, if that makes sense.
Absolutely does. And we've seen that from, in terms of the approach to filmmaking, that we've had writers on the podcast, we've had people that are just editors and they're creating stuff for their kids and that. And it's given everyone a real appreciation for other crafts that you wouldn't necessarily, because your focus is so on performance or direction or whatever, you wouldn't necessarily think, oh, I should do this, try this out. But I think it's a really smart move as well. I think it's very smart to think wider than your kind of current focus, because you can start creating stuff for your showreel. Like we had an actor called, his first name's Declan, and he's based in Toronto. And he's, yeah.
Yes.
Do you know him? do you know him? Yeah. So his partner or his wife has never acted before, and I saw the film. I'm going, she's never acted before. What's she doing a current job? She should be acting. That's what I said. So it's great and he's never shot anything. But when I saw his film, I was going, can you show me what camera you shot this on? Because it looks like an Arri camera or something like that. And he showed me the camera. It's just a simple Canon camera, but it was the kind of almost like God lighting through the window, and everything seemed kind of spot on. So have you seen his film?
I have not seen it yet.
I can show
I
you
have
that
to
one as well.
be like, hey, man.
Yeah. So it was quite impressive. I'm just going to find you this film now. Okay, so videos. So I uploaded 105 videos last weekend, just so everyone in our team could view them all. Okay, I can find. Oh, there we go. Subtitled. Okay.
I'm so excited for this.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Where are we? Okay. So he shot this with his son, and when you look at his Instagram account, he shoots a lot with his family, which is very cool. So it's like he's already doing this before any kind of festival or lockdown, and it's really nice to see. He's got this really creative partnership with his young son. So I think you can, as a mother, you can totally appreciate this, kind of building a connection, that kind of thing. So if I share the screen one with audio. So can you see this little wheel spinning around?
Yeah.
Okay.
Allez à l'attaque les gars! Mais
Qu'est-ce qu'il y a?
mais tiens pas!
Eh mais tu fais quoi là? C'est pas bien de te mettre en colère comme ça. Ça me rappelle une vieille légende indienne qui dit qu'il y a une bataille éternelle, acharnée, entre deux loups à l'intérieur de nous. Le premier loup, c'est le mal. La colère, l'envie, la jalousie. La tristesse, le regret, l'avidité, l'arrogance, la honte, le rejet, l'infériorité, le mensonge, la fierté, la supériorité et l'ego. Il prend le dessus, souvent parce qu'il est fort, toujours méfiant. Il est tapi à l'orée de ta conscience et il surveille l'autre loup, prêt à lui sauter à la gorge. L'autre loup, c'est le bien, c'est la joie, la paix, l'amour, l'espoir, la sérénité, l'humilité, la gentillesse, la bienveillance, l'empathie, la générosité, la vérité, la compassion et la foi. Il a confiance. Il sait que son heure viendra tôt ou tard, alors il attend. Il ne se montre que quand tout est calme.
Et c'est lequel qui gagne?
C'est celui que tu nourris.
But Sarah, don't you know?
Yeah, it's pretty sweet, isn't it?
That was so cool and so well done.
Yeah, I know it's. So when we saw that, you almost don't need the subtitles. That's how well made it is. My only small criticism, I'm going to tell you this, obviously, because this will air after the 20th, which is our little deadline thing, is that I've not asked him yet. Are the wolf shots stock shots? I'm not
I was going to question.
Yeah, it's super picky. It's super picky, but if they're, because it's like, it feels a bit, do we allow that? Has he bought those? I don't know. You know what I mean? So, and obviously people have used news footage on other films, so it's kind of a similar thing. So if I'm going to forgive news footage about a riot, then
I think it's really cool and well used. But that's my opinion. It's your show.
No. I totally agree with you. I'm not going to kind of judge away from that because of a couple of really needy questions. But yeah, it's when we saw that was I think that was our second international film. I was like, oh, wow, this is great, you know. And it's not that far from here, so it was kind of a cool thing. And I've asked him a few questions about the production.
That I like that one.
Yeah. So, what was the winner of the I'm going to call it IMF, like Mission Impossible. It was the Finger film, wasn't it?
Fingers. I want to say like Five Fingers of Fury, and I'm so sorry if I'm wrong there, because Josh's film was fantastic, and I literally screamed while I was watching it because I thought it was brilliant when the little finger fight.
It was very clever.
With that stuff.
Yeah. So it's quite a strong. Do you feel the kind of community vibe in Canada as wider, or is it more Toronto based where you can kind of? Do you feel kind of your ideas are sometimes closed off because you don't want to share them because someone might steal them? But how does it feel?
I mean, I might be in a very sheltered bubble, but I find that our community are very sharing, caring, and encouraging. I haven't come across very many people that are closed off and just rude about it or like possessive in any way. We tend to want to raise each other up. And I hope, like, knock on wood, that I stay within that kind of circle where we do embrace and encourage each other, because the industry is hard. It doesn't matter who you are or what you are in this industry. It is a hard one. And if you don't have allies and friends and support in the industry, I can't see you going very far.
Absolutely. Especially if you want to create your own content, like on a micro budget thing, and you want to elevate that. So it's quite nice to speak to the people that know each other a little bit, that I've spoken to a little bit as well, which is really cool. So it's pretty cool. And I like listening to other projects that other filmmakers have as well. Like Michael's got his podcast about food in Toronto, which I absolutely love. I was listening to it yesterday. So yeah, it's
on the weekend, and I'm like, oh, why?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you were saying you were a horror nerd. What kind of horror are we talking about, and how did that start?
So one of my first memories as a child is sitting on my dad's lap and watching Hellraiser, and I don't think it's ever changed.
Your dad's a genius for that.
We call my dad the idiot savant. So yeah, I remember that, and like Tales from the Crypt Keeper and all of that were part of growing up. And then Blair Witch Project was actually pivotal for me as a child too, because I also lived out in the woods, and I remember getting dropped off after going to the movies, and I had to walk down our 3-mile driveway in the woods and being terrified, but loving every second of it. Like classics like Cube and Thriller, and thrillers along that line.
Cube is amazing. I've got goosebumps thinking about that film. That is fantastic. Because when I watched that, I think it was Matrix was 99, wasn't it? I think it was the year after I started working at, I was going to say Star Trek for some reason. I started working at a cinema for a couple of years before, a few years before uni, but I've had friends that worked on huge productions and that. And I thought, oh yeah, it was pre-internet when people were sharing how their love of film. So it really came from a point of love. They said, oh yeah, borrow this DVD of Cube. I was like, what the hell is this? And I said the same thing about Pulp Fiction, because I was late on the fact of Pulp Fiction. So I had Pulp Fiction, I had Cube. I was stuck on Cube first because it looked more interesting to me. And my God, that's great. Especially like the cheese wire that cuts people into multiple chunks. So I love all that. And
darkness to come up with that kind of stuff. I love all of that stuff. One of my goals as an actor is to play the bad guy in a horror film.
Yeah, because look, Pinhead is pretty much the ultimate.
Yeah,
like I met Brad Dourif once, and he's scary just to look at. And that was after Deadwood came out, and I loved Deadwood. So he signed this. I've got this huge horror. I don't have it here because we just moved in. But I've got this huge horror piece of art I found at a convention years ago, and I had it signed by Christopher Lee, Robert Englund. There's only a few people that are still surviving that are not signed it. The dream would be Anthony Hopkins on it because he's there, you know. And I've had a couple of others. So when he signed it, he was like, "Oh, this is great." And I had the fact that I had Christopher Lee sign it as well. But you know, way before he obviously was too ill to do anything like that. But it was just so cool to kind of connect people. Doug Bradley's on there as well. So it's kind of like, it's going there. It's going right there. Next to the John Carpenter piece of art, I've got the he sign. So I'm going to, I love it to bits. And Hellraiser is such a dark film for such a, like, a young anyone to watch. So did you kind of have nightmares, or were you kind of in love with the kind of content? Were you kind of old enough to realize what you were watching?
I think I was like 2 or 3 when we watched it, so I was little, but my parents always had adult discussions with me and treated me like an adult when we talked about stuff, so there's always been an understanding between what's real and what's not, and exploring the imagination and understanding how to address it. So I think that's healthy, and I recommend other parents do that. Now, I don't necessarily recommend that they watch Hellraiser with their toddler, but have that kind of open discussion, be able to look at different things from different perspectives and not put them in a bubble.
Yeah, I that's really refreshing. It's nice, because if you try and hide that content away from your kids or your nieces and nephews or whatever, I think that they kind of gravitate towards that anyway, but they might look at it differently. So if you kind of open Pandora's box for that kind of stuff, it's my first thing is I thank my eldest brother for introducing me to horror. So kind of a similar thing to your dad, and he's I think he's 15 years older than me. I should know that. And the first one I remember seeing was Child's Play. Now, Child's Play was more significant in the UK, and it got banned for I think it was Child's Play 3 got banned, or all of them did, because there was a child murder caused where this child was taken away from a shop where his mum was, and is taken down a railway track by 2 very young kids. I think they were 7 or 8, and they murdered this toddler. And the film that Jamie Bulger, and so they said, "Oh, we watched this film, we got inspired by that." And I watched it. The strange thing is, I watched it as the same age as they did, and I was just terrified by it. Like the idea of that, and then my brother's like, "Oh yeah, do you want to watch some other horror films?" And there was it Brain Dead, all early Peter Jackson stuff, and I was like, I was loving it. Not then, but now I love it to bits.
Have you fallen down like the Japanese theme reel horror classics yet?
No, I've in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was introduced to The Ring and a couple, a few of those other films. I love it to bits because tonally, Asian movies or Japanese and Korean are so dark.
They are. If you want to have your world rocked, watch Audition.
Oh my God, Piano Wire.
Why does it come back to Wire?
I know, yeah. It's like it's something very grim. It's like when you see that on a something that cuts cheese slices, or whatever. When you see that, it's the idea of it. Like the intent. It's almost like the score, like with Jaws. The intent of a shot or a sequence can be scarier than actually showing it. But when you see that in Audition, is it? And what's the one? Oh, what's the Itchy the Killer?
Oh, I love Itchy. It's one of my favorites.
I love it. Yeah, there was a whole glut of that in early 2000s that I was introduced to, and I loved it. Like early John Woo with I don't know if you've seen Hard Boiled.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's my jam. That's all day long. So when we were watching these films, I was going, yeah, anything that's dark, anything that's got horror elements, yeah, this is going to go up the scoring for me. So what kind of what's relatively new films have you watched recently that you really enjoyed in that way, horror wise?
Well, and I'm going to do a plug for my new friend Ryan Andrews. Then Ryan's been making films in the US and Canada, and he has a knack for horror. Right now on Amazon Prime is his film called Save Yourself.
I'm gonna write that down.
I was actually introduced to Ryan because here during our lockdown time, a lot of actors and professionals have been coming together in groups to just continue to enjoy art. And so in one of our local trainers called Sophie and Rooney, she runs a cold read soiree, and Ryan submitted a couple of his features to be read by actors. And he purposely hides his name in the process, and we get to go through these films, the scripts as they're in development, and the the writer gets to hear them in live time, and the actors get to experience the character. And it's so cool to be able to do this. Like, I'm honored. It's become a bit of a drug every weekend that we get together and do these cold reads.
It's a lot of fun.
It is. And I've had the pleasure of now reading 3 of Ryan's scripts. And the first 2 were horror based, and I can't obviously share with you the content that was in them because they're in development, but I fell in love with his character development and storytelling, and even in the narration, like the moving of the pieces. There's so much detail that when I went to actually watch Save Yourself, I could see the words coming off the page on how he put it together, right down to the camera angles and the cinematography that went into it, and the little Easter eggs of what you see in the background, and the emotion and feeling behind it. So the characters are so rich, and they're not just, here's the dumb blonde, here's the, the guy that's going to get killed first, here's this. It's none of that. It's, here's these characters with these rich, deep lives, like onions. I'm going to do a Shrek reference here. And you peel them apart as you go through the whole story. And then there's all these twists and turns that you don't expect. And at the end, you're just like, what? And so, yeah, I'm currently obsessed with him.
So that's called Save Yourself.
Yeah. And I know it's on Amazon Prime in the States and in Canada. I don't know if it is in the UK, but definitely worth it.
And what's his name? Sorry.
Ryan Andrews.
I'm getting so many good recommendations.
I gotta make sure that he's Ryan Andrews is this thing.
Jessica Cameron. Okay, that's it.
Ryan M is his middle initial. Andrews.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. Cool. I'm gonna watch that.
I've been inspired by his writing style too. So in this new class that I'm in, where I'm developing an actual feature, I'm trying to use elements the way that he writes to
cool.
what I'm doing. And at first I was looking at the stuff that I was making and I was going, there's too much action, not enough talk. But I realized that I've built a lot more story into the action without all the talk. So I'm quite comfortable with it.
That's awesome. That's great, because you're so right. Any kind of film that, if you don't properly develop characters, even smaller ones, it's tiring to watch, isn't it? Like there's elements of this film I'm going to mention that I didn't like, but then there's large parts that are totally my jam. And I loved Cabin in the Woods. But when you've got, I think it's Richard Jenkins and Bradley Whitford, their 2 characters in the control room it's as though they've been acting together for 30 years. They're both brilliant actors. But when you watch great actors perform, I think the material's really great as well. And especially for something so ridiculous when you watch the movie. So it's that's really good. And so how long have you been part of that class that develops a full screenplay? How does that work?
Oh, so the cold reading soiree has only been going on since isolation started, to my knowledge. It might have been before that, but I got introduced to it during isolation. The script writing class I'm in is completely different, and that's brand new and only started last week. So.
Oh, awesome. That's great. I really like the idea that these positive, obviously there's a lot of negative things as well, but all these positive creative avenues have appeared. And like, obviously there's a lot of auditions that you must be doing, and there's a lot of auditions that are at least for getting your name out and your face out to casting directors. So the fact that you've got cold reads of material, that it feels like really exclusive as well, I bet.
It does. And it's strengthening what I've noticed. Okay, so during isolation and the whole switch to the new normal is the world of acting, the world of casting, all of it. We are moving towards how do we address this new way of life? Because we don't feel that we're ever going to go back, but we're going to find new mediums and new ways to go. And so there's pockets of actors who are unfortunately going to leave themselves in the dust because they're not pushing to learn to work under these new mediums.
100%.
Networking, and they're not communicating with the bubble that's growing. And it's not that we're trying to be exclusive and say, no, you can't play. It's that we are leveling up together. And so, for example, the group of actors that I work with regularly, we're used to having a class and audition pieces over Zoom. So we're used to working within this box, right? So this, if I were in the room with you, and I was sitting as close as I am to my camera, we'd pretty much almost be nose to nose, and that's just awkward. But in this room, there's a lot more depth and sensitivity that we can express through this medium. So it's getting used to that, getting used to that play, and getting used to be able to feel and emote back and forth between an actor who might not be in the physical room with you anymore. So it's learning a new skill to go within the toolbox that you've got. So those of us that have continued to strive and to work and to learn those new muscle groups are going to be the ones that are going to continue to push forward in the industry. And I'm not trying to say that to be salty, because I want everyone to succeed, but I've had a lot of people who reached out to me recently like, hey, how do I do this? How do I get in the industry? I'm like, well, here's a bunch of classes. Here's this. How don't you try that? Why don't you do this? And they're like, oh, I went to school for it. I don't want to do it. Well, that's cool.
Yeah. So do you think that some of those actors, it makes complete sense, and you're not being salty, the fact that you're sharing this with me, and there's going to be young actors watching this that are, just think that actors that are 10, 11 years old that are, doing small roles or whatever, they're going to be doing that. It's almost like breathing for them in terms of expanding their knowledge base, expanding their way they approach getting jobs or groups of friends. So you've got to be on board. If you're not on board, then you are going to be left in the dust, like you kind of really well put it. And especially for getting roles, or you've got to adapt. You've got to create your own content. I think that's been quite a consistent through line with speaking to actors and performers, that you've got to start creating a lot of your own content almost as well. And I think working in
make your own content, get out there, because it will be seen, and it's just a matter of time before you're in the crosshairs and the right role lines up for you, right? You go to 1,000 and not book, but it might not be with you. It could just be they didn't like the shape of your eyebrows that day, or whatever. But you still need to sharpen that tool and grow those muscles.
Absolutely. Like something I didn't know until recently, and I'm not looking to make a feature anytime soon, because if I kind of got I've got a very good short idea for a horror film, say at Christmas, and I've actually built a couple of contacts through this festival that are, I'm going to make sure the idea is kind of locked in, and then I'm going to hand it off to a couple of people in Toronto actually to kind of to work on the idea. And I didn't know you could actually put and sell or put up on Amazon Prime your own content, your own feature films. I didn't know that. So the fact that I'm learning all these little things as well.
Netflix too. Now I don't know the process, but I've heard that Netflix is very open and receptive right now to.
Absolutely, yeah, because obviously they've been, they must be reaping the rewards of people being at home and that. But if the content's super consistent, though, isn't it? And like their documentaries, they're knocking it out of the park with their documentaries, especially sports and crime, or like when I watched Making a Murderer a few years ago, and like, oh my God, it just made me so angry. It made me so angry in terms of, is he innocent, guilty? And they've kind of continued to do that. And the fact that Amazon have got a platform now where you can put your own content on there. A friend of mine had this documentary, and he's put it up on there, and the fact that I can just access it now, which is great. So yeah, I'll be definitely checking out Save Yourself. That's gonna be on my I did this little review thing on my Instagram just to kill some time, and that's I do a weekend horror review, so I'm going to start a horror podcast at some point. So yeah, that's definitely going to be on there. Yeah, but I'm really chuffed that you sent us your film, Katisha. It was really fun to see. It was a little bit low quality in terms of the actual video, but if you've got another version you could send, which is fine anyway, because we're going to showcase all the films. And we're going to have little samples of the podcast and that, and tie it in with the film itself. So, yeah. And
I'm going to get Jamie to put proper credits on it, because that's
yeah. If you can send us that within a week or so, we can make sure it's featured on the 20th. That's when we're doing our live event. It's going to turn into a bit of a monster edit, but yeah.
That's awesome.
So I'll show you Declan's film as well. And we had a really good chat about his film. But when you see the shots, you think it's shot on a really expensive camera. I'm like, I almost said to him, I almost don't believe you. But yeah, let me find that. So he was a really good dude. I really like him.
He's fun.
Okay. Oh yeah. So if I find that. And he was telling me about where the story came from, and he developed a really strong idea. So
Yeah, I'm really amazed by some of the story concepts, even on like the lower quality stuff. Just the acting that went into some of the films that I've seen shown up online, the story, the arc, the character development has all been really cool. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm going to show you after this one. I'll show you another one called it's about a fly in isolation. It's a UK film. I'll show you that as well. And okay.
So I have a question. The UK film industry, are you guys shut down as well? How are you?
Yeah, pretty much across the board. And there's slow because there's quite a lot of Netflix shows filmed over here. And it's kind of, I get the feeling that there's second unit stuff being filmed of shows, and it's going to gear up. It's the next month. I think the next month you'll see a huge surge. There's going to be a massive bottleneck of shows in terms of demand for actors as well, and all of that. Because I was speaking to a couple of. Did you see Gus and Us? I think it was the first film shown on that festival. So Courtney Delenn and her husband, they both worked on Suits together, and I was talking to them about they were working on what's it called? It was Del Toro, the guy that did Pan's Labyrinth. They were working on his TV show, and that was shut down. And I was talking about the bottleneck of talent. So in terms of the use of cars, crew, that kind of thing. So it's going to be crazy the next year or so. And I know James Cameron, the producer of Avatar, flew to New Zealand, but they've got to be in isolation for 2 weeks before they can start production again. So it's been mental. But here, yeah, it's very similar. It's very similar. So I'm working at home, and yeah, the rest of the house, the flooring's been done today, or it started today. So I couldn't step out the office for 5 hours. So yeah, thankfully I managed to have a break in that. So let me show you Declan's film. Okay, can you see a black screen?
Hey, where are you going?
Going to work, babe.
But we discussed this yesterday.
You think I want to go to work?
I need you.
Okay. What choice do I have? They need me. I come home every night. I hug you, we kiss, we say goodnight to each other. People are dying in hospital beds alone. They don't see their family. They don't see their loved ones. I'm the last face they see. And you don't
All
care.
I'm saying is, I don't want you going out there. I don't care about all those
fine.
people.
I'm young, I'm healthy. I used to go to work and see 4 people die in a week. Now I see 20 people die in a day? Look, I can quit. I want to quit. But I would hate myself.
Hey, babe.
That's why I love you, babe. I know now with certainty who I am and what I did and at what cost. And now all I can ask is, who was I? And who was she? And what was the point?
Oh, I'm so proud of him.
Yeah, he nailed it. He really nailed it. And so I spoke to him last Monday, and it was he was telling me about the process of speaking to, I think it was a nurse or a doctor that lives next door, and where he got the story from. And he asked her 5 questions about what she does and about not being able to go back to your family if things go pear-shaped at work. And it was great. And it's so cool that people that we have in our festival and with your festival, it's such a positive community in terms of creativity. It's really lovely to see.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited, like I said, to see every single one of them, because each person that created a piece of art has created a little time capsule for this moment of what we're all experiencing collectively and from different angles. And so, yeah, I'm pumped to see everything that comes out of this and any other short film festival that was inspired by isolation in general, because it's so cool.
So I've got a project for next year, depending on how, because if I have to go anywhere on a plane and quarantine's 14 days, then I'm not going to go on the journey. But I've got a project to go to Toronto and create a documentary about filmmakers, about the filmmakers that have submitted to us and as a wider community. So I'm developing over the next few months. I really hope, and because the community is so strong, it's going to be really fun to do. And so I'm going to show you this little fly film. This is a UK based one. So, and if you do come over here and you need any help in the industry, I'm happy to. Yeah, that's great. Absolutely. I really appreciate that. So I kind of want to give, because we've had so many films from Canada, and just the back and forth through emails has been really nice. And it's such a strong creative industry there. And I've spoken to people that have worked on things that I love. So I've got this, like yesterday, someone, he was a props guy on a film called Frequency with Jim Caviezel. And I love that film. Yeah. And he's talking to me about working on the Netflix film In the Tall Grass with Patrick Wilson. So it was so cool. I was asking him about his second unit work, about doing the drone stuff and the church. One of the reasons the church was in it is so they could store all the gear in the film there. Because they couldn't store it anywhere else, and they were so far into the part of the country, they stored it all in the church. I was like, that's great. It's actually kind of brilliant. It is, isn't it? It's such a simple thing. And so that's what I want to do. I want to create a documentary about Canadian filmmakers that have submitted to this process and how they're getting on like a year later. So that's going to be part of our festival next year. That's really neat. I like that. I like that concept. But I do hope that you connect with like UK filmmakers and all of that as well, because I want to know their process too. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we're definitely doing that. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to work out the best way to do that. And yeah. So can you see a black screen? Yep. Okay. Should.
We find the finest cowbells in the land. Wonderful, wonderful aroma, wonderful taste.
It so well.
Yeah, it's very clever.
Aw.
My biggest compliment to, I think it's Ollie Jones that made that, was his shot composition, his shot choice. That the animation's very good, and I think that was his first animation. I'm like, I don't believe you, it's really good. And that sounds ridiculous. That's like some sort of jealousy from the past or whatever. But it's I spoke to him. I think his podcast is going to be next week. Yeah, it'll be next week. And I said your shot choice was great in terms of your low angles, what you're dropping out of focus, like the shot of watching TV. Like that, do you have everything in focus, or do you have just the remote and him, and the fly? Sorry. And what I didn't realize till the second or third time of watching was inside the light. It's got the shadow of the fly on the inside of the actual light as well. So he's at it. So the detail. So the details. Yeah, it's so clever, and there's one or two more that I'd love to show you, but I kind of want to save those for next week. But yeah, it's been an amazing process, and I'd love to do this for horror. That's what I want to do. So horror's so my jam now.
You know, put the pedal to the metal and actually go out there and make the horror films that I want to.
Yeah. So is that kind of what you'd love to do in terms of, would you like to perform in those films, those horror, or would you prefer to kind of get the kind of writing flow on?
Not that again, writing is new to me, but I've always had concept and idea of where to go with a story. And I would think it'd be really neat to see more women take a front seat in creating horror as well, because horror tends to be a man's world. And I'm not going to go on this big feminist tirade right now, but
I know it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true.
But yeah, so it is a lot run by men, and the roles for women are written by men. And so there's a lot of two-dimensional layers that get put into it, which is one of the reasons, again, why I loved Ryan's writing, because he puts women forward and writes more intricate characters and has like these female badass characters that reign true, for example. And so I want to see that kind of stuff happen more. I want to see more psychological thrillers with women at the helm. So yeah.
Because I can't remember her name. What's the director of Hurt Locker called? I'm going to find a name. Right. Where are we? Because she's an exceptional director. Catherine Bigelow. Now, she's been directing since the 80s, and she used to be married to James Cameron. So they used to joke. She directed Point Break as well. So she's been making great movies for such a long period. And I don't know if you've ever seen Near Dark. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
So I love Near Dark because it's a completely different, like the sense of family for a vampire movie in terms of, and the way it's executed and built. Late Bill Paxton, absolutely brilliant. But like you say, she makes the majority of her films are strong male characters still though, but she's an exceptional filmmaker, and she's one of the female directors that isn't necessarily put up there. It's more like, obviously Patty Jenkins is super talented as well, but you've got Kathleen Kennedy, who's been a producer for decades making great movies, and you've got Catherine Bigelow, who's been directing great stuff as well. So I absolutely agree with you in terms of horror and body horror. It is predominantly men, and it'd be nice to see, I think, the take on horror as well, and the execution of it. I think that'd be a really key thing.
I think like psychologically, because when women are going to commit a crime versus how men commit crime, like through classic psychology, I think if women start putting that into screenplay, that horror films are going to get a lot darker.
Oh yeah, I loved what was it? Ginger Snaps. That was a great.
Oh, there's
that was
another
a good one.
classic.
Yeah, I've got this period of 2000 and 2010 that it's all locked in. I know pretty much all of it because I used to work at cinemas and that part time. So it's Ginger Snaps is a really strong female werewolf movie, as I remember it, and it's great to see. And when a film becomes obviously about the gender, not necessarily the content, but oh, okay, that's the agenda, whatever it is. But when it's a super strong film, you totally forget who made it, their gender or whatever it is, and it's a super strong piece of content. That's the key thing, is the story, isn't it? It doesn't matter what you're making. So it's more horror, just more horror, please. and a decent sequel to Pinhead and Hellraiser would be nice as well.
That would be neat. I would pay that.
So I'll tell you a little story before we finish. That I bought Hellraiser on 4K Blu-ray. And it was actually one of the first 4K Blu-rays because they're super expensive. I thought, right, I'm going to buy this, and I watched it with my future sister-in-law and my missus, and she has a long-term pain issue, and she falls asleep a lot. She has energy levels are up and down. So we're watching Hellraiser about 6 months ago, something like that. So it's Perver, Vicky, and myself in my mum and dad's house, and we're watching it and like, oh, this is great. Perver's Vicky's older sister, and that we love horror. And Vicky's she's falling asleep. So she fell asleep before the very end scene, and then she hadn't seen Hellraiser before. And what's the line he says? Oh, what the hell's that? I can't remember the line. Just before he gets pulled apart with the chains.
Okay, yeah.
And she woke up. That scene is like, what's going on? She had the worst nightmare. Yeah, and I was laughing because I knew what was coming up, but it's so dark. And the idea of someone hiding in the house, there's something so sinister about it, like that, and especially the layers of the prosthetic work is genius.
Incredible, especially for the time it was made. I mean, I think we've gone a little bit backwards in some of the special effects.
Yeah.
Everything switched to CGI instead of all the work that we did. I mean, look at Jurassic Park, for example. We can't the animatronics and the special effects that went into that were so ahead of its time, and then we haven't been able to replicate that, and that kind of stuff was pure magic as far as I'm concerned.
Like, look at one of the greatest scenes in cinema, in the rain in Jurassic Park. That's all I need to say. The mixture of animatronic through the sunroof and the windscreen is genius. It's seamless, actually seamless. I've got to say one little small thing about that film, though. There's a massive continuity error with Jurassic Park. Do you know what it is? It's, where the goat is, that's the T-Rex is going to eat. When the car goes over the same area, where's all the land gone to? Because there's a huge drop. So next time you watch it, it's the same fenced area. This is just pet peeve. But when you see the same fenced area, there's land, there's the goat. But when the rain starts, the car goes over, where Alan Grant's swinging and all that. Where's the land gone?
Gone.
Yeah, so when you watch it again, I'll probably ruin that little bit of the scene, but it's an odd one. More power to Hellraiser, and I wish John Carpenter would make another film. So
I agree.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Katisha. You've been awesome. I wish I'd seen your dog though.
Well, I can show you one of them. Callie, come here.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Come here, dum dum. Oh. I can show you the big one because the little ones are.
Wow. Fantastic. So we've almost got a category, best in show for animals. We've almost got it. But we're debating. We're releasing over the next few days You may have seen it today, the Codec Award for editing. So we're going to do.
That, yeah.
We're not going to kind of go crazy. And then we had the Vance Burberry announcement yesterday, which was very, very cool, because he's the director of and cinematographer of many music videos, including Sweet Child of Mine. So when we got him on,
this is incredible.
I know.
Even though it's this tiny little thing that you started, is so cool to watch it grow and snowball.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Katisha. You've been a great guest, and
Thank you.
we'll advertise this. And if you want to send us a particular headshot you've got that help us with the marketing, you may have seen the other posters we have, and we want to kind of push you out as much as possible in terms of the podcast and that. And then look out for the 20th as well, because we're going to work and edit. We're going to show every film at least one shot from every single film, and I'm going to make sure that happens. So there's going to be 105 shot sequence of, don't know how that's going to work, but yeah.
Or is it going to be pre-canned?
There are going to be live elements. It's going to be so difficult when you was like three people. Nadia, who's our content creator, she's based in North Carolina, and then there's Chris and I who live about 15 miles away from each other. So it's the coordination. We're going to make it, if we do pre-record it, we're going to make it as live as humanly possible, and it's not going to be overly staged and overly produced. It'll be a very British affair kind of thing. That's the best way to describe it. So yeah.
Anyway.
Thank you very much, Katisha. You've been awesome.
Thank you. I'll keep an eye out for everything.
Absolutely. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Bye.